So the first question is, what is Wordsworth's theory of poetry? Is Wordsworth's theory of poetry practical or idealistic? Discuss. So this is our first question. What is Wordsworth's theory of poetry? So
Yes,
everyone got the question?
Wordsworth's theory of poetry explained in the preface to Lyrical Ballads focuses on emotion, imagination, and simplicity. He famously defines poetry as a spontaneous overflow of powerful feeling originating from emotion, recollecting in tranquility. And according to Wordsworth, poetry should use the language of common people and deal with ordinary experiences, especially those connected with nature. And the theory is practical because Wordsworth gives clear guidance on poetic language, subject matter, and emotional process. At the same time, it is idealistic because he believes poetry has a moral and spiritual function, and that imagination reveals universal truth. So, Wordsworth theory is neither purely practical nor purely idealistic. It is a balance, a combination of realistic poetry, poetic method, and idealistic belief in the power of poetry.
Okay. Anyone answering the same question? You can also compare it to other poets' theory and other poetry also. For example, we can compare romantic with metaphysical because both are contrary to each other. And in this way, we can give the answer in a very explained manner. So, anyone want to try this question?
Yeah, can I answer?
Yes, please.
Okay, so yes, like ma'am, you said it is actually idealistic, and even the theory is at times self-contradictory because, as the preface begins of Lyrical Ballads, Wordsworth says that we should actually try to obliterate the difference between the language of the prose and the poetry, and that the language of the poetry should be the real language used by men. But when it comes to poetic diction, Wordsworth is of the advocate that the diction that should be used should be refined language. It should not be the language of the streets. It should be literary language. So then again, he's talking about being esoteric and eclectic in poetry. Again, in a way, he's denying the poetry to the common man. So many have even critiqued Wordsworth for his theory to be idealistic and not actually following his own theory. When Wordsworth writes, when Wordsworth expresses himself, he actually expresses in a language which is very literary. And one has to refer to dictionaries, one has to refer to other references. He also gives Greco Roman references. So then again, it means that it's out of reach of the common rustic people that he advocates the poetry to be for.
Okay. Yes, Nidhi ma'am, you answer. Are you answering? Anyone? You want to try this question? Okay. So, okay, no problem. Anyone answering the same question? If you have any doubt while listening others, you can prepare your answer. It is not so much difficult. My point is at least speak something just to remove your hesitation. है ना? Okay, so my next question is, why is Preface to Lyrical Ballad considered the manifesto of romantic poetry? Okay, so why is Preface to Lyrical Ballad considered the manifesto of romantic poetry? This is the question.
Yes, ma'am. The preface to Lyrical Ballet by William Wordsworth is considered the manifesto of romantic poetry because it clearly announces a new poetic state that breaks away from classical traditions and uh, Wordsworth rejects artificial poetic diction and rigid rules uh, that followed by neoclassical poets and instead he argues that poetry should deal with ordinary life and common people, especially those living close to nature. And he defines poetry as a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, which emphasizes emotion rather than intellect. So at the same time, he balanced this spontaneous with spontaneity with emotion and recollecting tranquility, showing that poetry involves a reflection and craft. And Wordsworth also stresses the importance of imagination and the moral role of the poet. So, Preface explain the aim, methods, language, and philosophy of romantic poetry. So, it functions as a literary declaration, and therefore, it is rightly called the manifesto of romanticism.
Okay, anyone? Okay, ma'am.
Okay, good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
And actually, I have been missing in last two sessions, I
Yes,
see. Yeah. Yeah, I was into my cousin's wedding.
I
Yeah.
was just about to ask where were you in last sessions?
Yes, yes, ma'am. Actually, I was out of state and was not even having the time to interact with you as well. So that's why I'm just telling it to you right now only.
No issue.
Okay. So, ma'am, how many sessions have got like done in the last week?
I think we have completed Unit 7 and
Okay.
few topics on Unit 6,
Okay.
Aristotle, Longinus, and Natya Shastra, Dhwani theory.
Okay.
And today we are discussing, as I have shared the questions also in the group.
Okay. Okay.
So,
So today we are going to wind up this unit, unit
no, no,
7.
no. We have few topics on this unit also. So we will continue and finish. So for next session, I will give you the topics that we are going to discuss in the next session. So today we are
Okay, ma'am.
discussing four text majorly Wordsworth and T.S. Eliot, Matthew Arnold, and I. Richards. So
Yes, ma'am. Actually, you have texted also in the group, so I have already prepared them.
okay, so you know na, what is the question I'm asking? Why is Preface to Lyrical
Yes,
Ballad considered the manifesto of romantic poetry?
yes, yes, ma'am. Okay, so preface to the lyrical ballad somewhere has its origin in 1800, and preface basically came in the revised edition of 1802. And why it is a romanticism manifesto? Because it clearly, with principles, neglect the neoclassical poetry. They came out with the romanticism foundation. Why the key features of a particular manifesto is here, Wordsworth has clearly quoted one line, and that is that poetry is the spontaneous overflow of emotions. So they directly revealed that romanticism is something which is related to nature, love, emotions, imaginations. They were rejecting, logics, and so this was something there in the manifesto, like in the preface. The poetry which was about to be, founded from this particular preface was about a man speaking to man, like it we do not need any artificial language to connect with the people through poetry. This was something being prevailed in the preface of lyrical ballad. Secondly, it's all about that they rejected poetic diction as well. They wanted to implement with the simple and coherent language. that it should be connected directly with the emotions, because whenever we talk about emotions, it's all about the feelings. So here no diction is basically being needed according to Wordsworth. And the third one is all about that they have clearly mentioned that how the poetic lyrics are showing the imaginations, means through the as we are reciting the poetry, we come towards the we come towards the thought process of imagination and emotions, not goes or rush towards the reasons and logic. So this was being there, and it was totally contrast in the new classical poetry. There it was all about sensibilities, as we have read about John Donne, metaphysical poetry, Dryden's poetical forms, Absalom and Achitophel. So they were all about like connecting sensibilities, logic, science in poetry. But here in Romanticism, it is all about imaginations and feelings. So that's why it is somewhere the manifesto which started or began the age of Romanticism. This is a foundation text that I know. Thank you.
Okay, very well explained. Anyone with the same question?
Hello, ma'am. Good evening. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Yes, ma'am. So I would like to answer this question. Uh, Preface to the lyrical ballad came uh, uh, after the publication of Lyrical Ballads, which was published in 1798. It was the later version published in 1800, in which uh, Wordsworth added a preface to it as a self-defense, or we can say that manifesto of romantic age. It is considered as a primary text to the romantic age, in which Wordsworth argued that the subject matter of the poetry should be of common life, or we can say that or ordinary life, which we themes like which we sorry feelings like which we humans usually feels like sorrow, pain, happiness, love, or jealousy. Uh, then, as Nazman expressed, the poetry is the spontaneous overflow of the powerful feelings recollected in tranquility. So he defines the essence of poetry and the correct form of poetry, in which poetry shows the powerfulness of emotions, which remembered later. And then he expressed the role of poet. The poet is a man speaking to man, where a poet is not a superhuman but an ordinary man with heightened sensibility. So that's why it is called as the manifesto of romantic age. Thank you.
Ma'am, may I?
Okay. Yes, please.
Ma'am, Wordsworth's preface to Lyrical Ballad is considered as the manifesto of romantic criticism because it outlines the principle of romantic poetry in emphasizing emotions and simplicity and the importance of nature and rejecting the new classical way of writing like formalism and the artificialness of the poetic tradition and advocating for the poetry that speak to common human experience and feeling as Wordsworth said man to man speaking and it called for the using simple everyday language. He used everyday language and the rustic life for the abandonment of rigid rhymes and schemes and celebrating the nature as well as and the supernatural element he used. It put strong emphasis on the feeling and advocate for capturing emotion, as he said, recollecting in tranquility, and also giving the definition of poetry. As sir said, poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feeling. It takes its origin from emotion and recollecting in tranquility. And as I told you, he said he's a man speaking to man who has a greater knowledge of human nature, and he questioned and answered some reasons behind the writing in the romanticism about the romanticism and the way he's writing the romantic poetry. Ma'am, I also want to answer the second question you asked in that time. I was not unable to
Okay, please answer.
give answer. Uh, uh, what was the question? Actually, I forgot.
Okay, I'm repeating the question. 1 minute.
Yes, ma'am. First one.
Yes, so the question
Ma'am,
was,
maybe it's
yes.
practical or ideal in yes, yes, yes. Okay, ma'am. I got.
So the question is,
Uh,
what is Wordsworth's theory of poetry?
yes,
So
ma'am.
it is idealistic
Uh,
or it is practical? This was the question.
okay, ma'am. Okay. Ma'am, I want to give answer in a points to about the theory.
Yeah,
Uh,
as you wish.
yes, ma'am. First point is he said poetry is a emotion recollected in tranquility in the theory of poetry. And second point is poet has greater sensibility, as he said. And third is language of poetry should be close to prose, as someone said in art. अभी किसी ने बोला था शायद आंसर में वर्स फॉर्म में होना चाहिए क्लोज टू प्रोज and nature is the moral teacher, as he said, Wordsworth. And fifth is function of poetry to teach, to delight, and edify, revealing philosophical truth. While and I want to give the answer of the practical or idealistic. While this theory sounds practical, but for using simple diction and rustic life, it is practical. And his four stage of philosophical prose, like he has given four stages: first is observation, recollection, and revival and composition. As he said, for this, we can say it is practical. But critic like Samuel Taylor Coleridge pointed out that it is often impractical in execution, a literal language of rustic, because would often be too limited for the deep philosophical and experimentation. And Wordsworth himself often had to purify this language because he said that we should use the vernacular language, but it's not possible because being an intellectual person or being a philosophical or more, we can say a more elite class, we should be used for making a poetry more एलिमेंटेड और मैम क्या बोल सकते हैं उसको हम अगर हम पोइट्री को अगर हम मोर अच्छा बनाना है और फिलोसफिकल बनाना है
ornamental.
तो यस यस
Yes,
थैंक यू सो
ornamental you
सर
can
आई
use.
वाज यस सर आई मेरे को वर्ड याद नहीं आता ornamental sorry then it should be a it should use a more devices and like uh, so literature should be a good and intellectual as ST College said. So it shouldn't be a we can say somewhere it is practical and as ST College sir said it is idealistic. Ma'am, I'm done.
Okay. So as we are discussing this question, I want to ask your personal views regarding romantic poetry. So as if we say Wordsworth has discussed poetry as to give delight, not to teach something. So we whenever we read poetry, few critics have said that the purpose of poetry is to teach and delight, but in the case of romantics, it was always delight and pleasure. So what is your personal views and which poetry do you prefer? If I ask metaphysical, romantic, modern, Victorian, anyone, regarding all these points that we have discussed here, so what is your personal view? So, is romantic poetry actually practical and possible, or do you think that the purpose of a poetry, which is an oldest art form, the purpose should be to teach and to delight something, to inspire something to the readers whenever someone reading the poetry? So, do you get the question that what I want to ask? What is your personal view regarding the poetries that we have? Metaphysical, romantic, Victorian, and let's say modern also. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Got your question. So, according to me, a poetry, especially romantic poetry, which can teach and delight at once, is good. The people who say that art should be art's delight, or sorry, art should be art's sake, I do not agree with them because when you pursue art for just your pleasure, somehow it demeans. We can see in modern perspective in Bollywood or in music when we just run after fun or time pass, we ultimately end up having bad quality of literature, bad quality of books. But when you try to teach in a good manner, you end up writing poems like The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost or poems by William Wordsworth that can elevate your emotions.
and somehow do catharsis as well. Somehow take you to nostalgia as the poems of William Wordsworth do.
Okay.
Yes, one aspect is there I would like to add.
Anyone wants to
In
add?
one way,
Yeah, you're continuing?
I have one. I got later.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, one point is this: when you do not think about pleasure or lesson to others, but you write for pleasure only, it somehow helps you express your emotions and come off that writer's block. In that way, it can be justified, according to me. Like there are some poems where you do not teach anyone something, but it helps you come out of your writer's block, and then you can later write some good poetry. So bad poetry is essential to remove the writer's block, according to me.
Okay. Okay, so anyone wants to answer this question? What is your personal views? Everyone got the
Ma'am, I
question?
want to add. Yes,
Oh,
ma'am.
okay.
Okay, ma'am. As such as romantic poetry, ma'am, does teach morality, but not indirectly, because it teaches moral awareness through emotion or imagination. As Wordsworth writing about the nature, he wrote the imagination and the childhood emotions and his memory about the memory. So it indirectly connecting the people to their emotions and not teaching directly, but somewhere it is good for us to knowing about ourselves and connecting with our nature and understanding our inner self.
Okay. Okay, so today we have topics. All the topics are contrary to each other, like romantic to T.S. Eliot's tradition, individual talent, and I.A. Richards' practical criticism. So, after discussing all these things, we will again discuss this question in the last so that we will get more views regarding this. Okay, so I'm moving to next question. My next question is, what is Matthew Arnold's touchstone method? Okay, so what is Matthew Arnold's touchstone method?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you
Met,
answer.
Matthew Arnold's touchstone method is a critical approach used to judge the quality of poetry. And according to Arnold, poetry should be evaluated by comparing it with thought, excellent passages called Touchstone, taken from great poets like Homer, Dante, and Shakespeare and Milton also. So, if a poem or passage produced an effect similar to that of a touchstone, it possesses true poetic excellence. And Mr. Arnold believed this method helps critics avoid personal bias and identity, what he called high seriousness. And so the touchstone method emphasizes comparison, close reading, and emotional impact as the basic basis of literary judgment. So it was the Arnold touchstone method.
Okay, before everyone asks, I want to add one more point that please mention the authors or the person, literary person, Matthew Arnold considered as greatest so that we can take their text as touchstone, and he excluded few of literary person. So mention those name also. Okay. So Anamika, you answer. Then who is answering? I think Deepika ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so after Anamika, you answer.
Okay, so the study of poetry is an essay by Matthew Arnold, in which he introduced the touchstone method, which means judging the quality of poetry by comparing it with short, excellent passages or lines from some great poets. Here, the lines of the great poets is considered as touchstones. Okay, so originally touchstones means the stone used to test the purity of gold, where similarly, Arnold suggests that the true value of poetry can be tested by comparing it with universally acknowledged great lines. So the features of this touchstone method is evaluation through comparison, where he mentioned some poets or authors, for example, Homer, Dante, Shakespeare, and Milton, to which we will compare the modern lines uh, for evaluating the value of the poetry. And second feature is emphasis on high seriousness. He put emphasis on high seriousness of uh, truth and nobility of thought and expression. And this touchstone method set a objective standard of judgment to test the value of the poetry. That's it from my side.
Okay, Deepika ma'am, you answer. Then Raghavendra sir.
Yes,
And after Raghavendra sir,
yes, ma'am.
Vrindavan sir, you answer the question.
Ma'am, Mathew Arnold created a comparative method of criticism to judge the merit of a piece of a written work, which he introduced in literary criticism in his work Study of Poetry. So, in order to judge a poet work properly, a critic should compare it to the passages, single line, or the quotation taken from the work of the great masters of the poetry, and those passages should be applied as touchstone to the other poetry. Select some best lines from the well-known poetry, compare it with the other poems. He gave preference to the four writer, two classical writer, which is Homer and Dante, and two non-classical writer, which is Shakespeare and Milton.
Okay, he also excluded one very famous poet.
Geoffrey Chaucer.
Yes,
Then Chaucer, because he lacks high seriousness.
yes. Okay, sir. Please answer.
Yes, Touchstone method is a method to judge the poetry. Actually, Matthew Arnold has taken some classical poets and especially some short lines of classical poets, and Matthew Arnold makes them as standards. That this is the standard, and that these lines should be compared to the other poets to assess the quality. And he has taken some classical poets like Homer, Dante, Milton, and Shakespeare, as explained, and he excluded Geoffrey Chaucer, and because he doesn't think that all the things uh, just meet the high standards of the classical poet, the standards of those lines which he has mentioned, right? So in conclusion we can say that he has made a standard and a standard of the short lines of the classical poets, which could be compared to the modern poets or any other poet, so that they can assess the quality of the poetry. That is.
Yes. Okay, ma'am. I will try.
Okay, sir. Answer.
Yes, touchstone method. It is a comparative criticism of literature, and in this work he compared the any which is to criticism. So he compared these work from classical writers like Homer, Dante, and Milton and Shakespeare. And these few lines takes the works and compare with these classical writers. If they give like sense of classical and that given in these classical writings, if they compared and they complete these criteria, so they can consider that this is good poetry. And because poetry should be, according to Mathew and all, poetry should be moral seriousness and delight. Means seriousness and instruction. Moral and instruction is important according to Mathew and all. If they contain these criteria, then they consider a great or classical poetry or good poetry. And so this is the comparative criticism of literature, and this is mainly be focused on not only personal, but he emphasis on disinterestedness. Disinterestedness means not be biased by historical or personal or biographical references, but should be objective. So he gave this disinterestedness and objective criticism to judge any art of work. So this is from my side.
Okay, next
Yeah, ma'am.
Yogesh.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so the study of poets, I mean, the Touchstone method comes from someone's mic is on. The Touchstone method by Arnold comes from his essay in 1880, that is the study of poetry. And one thing that I would like to highlight is he is countering subjectivity. Usually, we think that poem is subjective; it should not be compared. Like my poem is my poem, his poem is his poem. We have certain emotions. It should be subjective. But Matthew Arnold is countering this thing, and he is making it objective. That you compare someone's poem to someone because there are time-tested poems and time-tested paragraphs which should be considered touchstone or high level. He calls them genius excellence, or there's a word there. Where's the word? There was a word of excellence.
high seriousness.
No, no, these are वो तो तीन criteria हो गए ना. There was a word, some genius excellence of some word, and then he has these three checklists like it should be high seriousness or diction or truth. And on the basis of these, he suggested us four pieces that I'm putting in the chat box. Uh, for example, from Milton, he says this line, his Paradise Lost, which cost Ceres all that pain to seek her through the world. And from Shakespeare, he has this line from Macbeth, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. Then from two classical. So he chooses certain lines that these are the high level, which has all the checklist, and you can compare it to the new poets. So you have the touchstone, like in jewelry, we have touchstone to see if the diamond or gold piece is original or not. So I would say it is basically having objectivity in poetry, countering subjectivity. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone wants to add more points?
I want to add the author he praised and criticized the name of the author
Okay,
he
okay.
criticized. He praised for Homer for novelty and clarity and truth of life, and Dante for intellectual power with moral vision, we can say, and Shakespeare for deep understanding of characteristic. And he also praised Milton for loftiness of style, and Sophocles for the tragic seriousness with restraint. And he also praised for Goethe for balance and imagination, intellectual, for balancing imagination with intellectual. And he criticized Dryden for being intellectual but hollow, and for Pope for bit over wisdom. He criticized Alexander Pope for bit over the wisdom, and Lord Byron for excessive use of subjectivity, because Byron used more subjectivity in their book, and Stanley for lack of moral solidity, and Keats for lack of intellectual and moral seriousness. Because John Keats as wrote multiple odes, so he was very intellectual, but the moral seriousness not seen in his work. And
Okay. Anyone with the same question? Okay, Nazman. Actually,
Ma'am,
I
I actually want to add very significant. Am I audible?
yes, you are audible.
Okay. Ma'am, actually, I want to add something very significant in other people's view. Uh, Alfred basically from the Victorian age, the age which is quite profound for industrialization and scientific discoveries. People are not happy with
Ma'am, your voice is
achieving.
breaking. It is not
Hmm.
properly audible.
Okay, okay.
Try to
Am I
reconnect.
audible properly now?
Try to reconnect.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
I think network issue. There is network issue. Till then, anyone wants to add? You can.
Yes, ma'am. In this, he also put the importance for Thomas Gray poetry. Thomas Gray, he consider it is have high seriousness. He has high seriousness, but he criticized to um, Geoffrey Chaucer, and he considered it is had historical sense, but not classical sense in Chaucer. And he also criticized to Robert Burns because he had not seriousness. So he compare basically or main important he objective criticism give the objective criticism that also praised by later T.S. Eliot.
Yes. Okay, anyone with the same question? I don't remember exactly, but I think a critic has also criticized Shakespeare for lacking seriousness or originality or something like this. I don't remember, I have read somewhere.
Samuel Johnson. Samuel
In,
Johnson.
in Samuel Johnson, he criticized Shakespeare.
Yes, because
Hamlet,
we
Hamlet is
can,
artistic failure called Hamlet.
Ha,
and also
exactly.
yes,
Artistic
T.S.
failure.
Eliot.
Yes.
It is a sales criticism. Hamlet and his problem. Objective correlative.
Vardhaman sir, your voice is echoing. So
But Hamlet and his problem is from by T.S. Eliot. It's not by Samuel Johnson. I didn't got your point. What are you saying?
I am saying that Samuel Johnson also criticized Shakespeare because he considered there is lack of seriousness in his work.
Yes. Anyone with the same question? No one? Okay, so let's just discuss next question. जब तक वो आएंगे
Then
जल्दी
I
से.
think Mathew Arnold also criticized Shakespeare for lacking high seriousness.
Matthew Arnold, but actually he's considering him as a touchstone. His few passage.
Yes, ma'am, but I, he does not always maintain high seriousness. He said somewhere. I don't know.
Okay, so let's discuss the concept of poetic truth and poetic pleasure. Okay, so discuss this concept of poetic truth and poetic pleasure. What do you understand by these two terms?
yes, ma'am. The poetic truth does not mean factual accuracy. It refers to the truth of human emotions and experiences and moral insights. And a poem is true when it automatically represents how people feel and respond to life. And on the other hand, the poetic pleasure on it is aesthetic enjoyment and we receive from poetry. This pleasure comes from rhythm, imagery, sound, emotional intensity, and intellectual satisfaction. So, both two concepts closely related. Poetic pleasure and poetic pleasure arises from poetic truth because when emotions are sincerely and artistically expressed, the reader feels both delight and understanding. So, poetry educates as well as please us. So, this is from my side.
Very nice. Anyone with the same question?
I think Ishwar sir has described everything right.
Yes.
And the same thing I would like to discuss, but only with my voice, that poetic truth is not a factual accuracy. माइक ऑफ कर लीजिए किसी का शायद.
I think मेरा ही है.
This is echoing.
So, uh, poetic truth is not a factual accuracy. It can be emotional or imaginative power of the poet. Like if emotionally I'm describing anything about anyone or anything, then it cannot be factual accuracy, but yes, it can be my imaginative power, or my imagination, right, my emotional things. But when it comes on poetic pleasure, that always comes from like if I'm writing something, and if I think that yeah, it's a good writing, that is if as a poet I feel always pleasurous, or that calls poetic pleasure. So poetic pleasure comes from emotional satisfaction, and poetic truth is not a factual accuracy, but comes from emotional or imaginative out. That is.
Okay, very nice.
Yes. Now I would like to also say same, but in my word, that I also explained by both sides. And this so poetic pleasure and poetic truth. Poetic truth, it is the man we can say poetry is to mainly evoke emotion and also to morality and objective of sensuousness. So poetic truth is poetry is to evoke emotion and also relate his objective with that emotion, and so that emotion and objective conclude in both ways. So that gives the poetic truth, and poetic pleasure it the who delight of emotion and give the uh, comfort, and also give the amusement and pleasure for the reader. So this is we can say poetic pleasure, that give pleasure or joy when we read poetry. So this is, I think.
Vrindavan sir, I would like to congratulate you that your speaking is now increasing day by day. You have a great knowledge, but your speed is increasing day by day. So
Yes, sir.
because of ma'am, it's good.
I know, I have not
That
because of me, because of his dedication and consistency.
his speed is increasing day by day.
Yes,
It's good.
there is clear improvement.
Thank you.
Right.
And you
Great
are
improvement.
having strong. The
Thank you. Thank
platform
you,
has
sir.
been provided by you only. So you matters a lot.
No, I'm just an initiator who initiated this thing. You are here, you are participant. Because of you, this is not possible. So I'm doing nothing actually, honestly.
No, ma'am, you are the foundation.
No, not actually. I'm
And
said
you are
that I am just
catalyst.
an initiator who initiated and just
Actually, sir, when I firstly speak, there is hesitation to me, and so when speaking, there is a problem. But I will
yes,
try
there is
my
always
complete.
we have to initiate. I was same as you. हम बचपन से सीख के नहीं आते हैं, so things take
Yes,
time.
mainly.
Yes. Okay, so
And you are
actually,
working as catalyst
I
for
would
art.
I would like to add one thing. So actually, we are recording this session, so we will discuss these things in the end, where I will stop the recording. Otherwise, our session will be so much talk. So I would like to discuss the question first, then we will discuss all the personal questions, suggestions, and things in the end. So we can discuss it initially or in the end. So in between, we will only have the questions, so that whenever you have a free time, you can rewatch the session to just get the insight again. Okay. So at the end, we will
Ma'am,
discuss
please sum up this answer.
what
Please summarize this answer.
summarize this answer.
Ma'am, can I add
Yes,
few?
ma'am.
Can I add few?
Yes, you
हाँ
can
आम लग
answer.
रहा बोलो
You can answer.
Okay. If we talk about what's the question, the poetic truth and the poetic pleasure, right? So let me articulate it here that poetic truth leads to poetic pleasure by engaging intellectuality with emotion. And how, see, poetry is all about imagination. According to Wordsworth, it is a final truth of one's life. Wordsworth has quoted that poetry is something which is a final truth of one's life, means it is directly revealing the emotions. So it is a poetic truth because it is a universal truth. It is not scientific, it is not factual, but it is somewhere showcasing the truth of a common life. But how it becomes pleasure, it exists with the intellectuality. While our imagination got satisfied by reciting the poetry, that becomes pleasure. While our universal facts got accepted in the form of poem, it becomes pleasure. And while emotions got balanced by reading something, means while we perceive the objective, then it becomes the pleasure. So so we can say here that while intellectuality imbibes with emotion, it leads to pleasure from the poetic truth. That's it.
Okay, very nice. Yes, Bhavish, continue.
Yes, ma'am. So, according to me, poetic truth is about mind and poetic pleasure is about heart. So, these are the proponents that I put in the chat box. So, like Plato criticized in Republic. I put it, I don't know, it got, yeah, it got. So, we can say in Republic, Plato criticized poets that you are away from truth, you are having imitation. Aristotle came justified, but Aristotle also said the same thing that it's about philosophy is better than history, and poets show the truth. Same Philip Sidney and Matthew Arnold did. They were focusing on truth and philosophy, saying something good, saying something wise. While people like Horace, Longinus, and Romantics, they focus more on the diction, the style, and emotion about pleasure. So they believed pleasure with learning, and in poetic truth, we focus only on knowledge rather than pleasure. So that's about brain, mind, or pleasure is about heart.
Very nice. Who is answering? Arundhati ma'am, you are answering the question?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Uh, So actually, I think it is unjust to separate the two, poetic truth and poetic delight or pleasure. And just as Naz ma'am has pointed out, I want to quote Keats, where he has said that truth is beauty and beauty is truth. But if we have to make watertight compartments, then I would say that poetic truth would be more like art for life's sake, and poetic pleasure would be art for art's sake, as propounded by Gautier, and then later, as aestheticism, that movement came in English literature by Walter Pater and Oscar Wilde. So, coming back to the poetic truth, one can say that poetry or poetic expression sometimes it becomes a medium and in that poetry the poet can express his own individual truth, because we know truth is subjective. So, with respect to having a holistic view of literature, I think it is unjust to make these watertight compartment and to separate them.
Yes, very nice. Everyone explained very well. Okay, so I think somehow we have discussed this question that what does Arnold's like what was the limitations and advantage of Touchstone method. So I'm skipping this question, but if we have time, we will discuss it later in the end. So now we are discussing next question, which is what is objective correlative, the concept given by T.S. Eliot. Okay, so what is objective correlative? If possible, please give an example and explain it. Okay, so yes, Arundhati ma'am, you have raised your hand first. You answer.
Yes. So, am I audible? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, so we know that this theory comes from T.S. Eliot from his famous essay Hamlet and its Problems, and where he calls Hamlet as an artistic failure, and he also calls Hamlet as the Mona Lisa of literature. So we will see why. Presently, we'll see why he calls it the Mona Lisa of literature. So objective correlative is actually a literary device through which author describes a character's emotions, the character's psyche by making use of the right kind of stage settings, objects, chain of events, and if not anything else, then like concretized actions are undertaken by the characters so that their emotions are implicitly revealed. Like explicitly, the Hamlet would not say that, oh, now I'm angry or I'm jealous or frustrated. Implicitly, it will be implied to the audience and the readers. So, what happens in Hamlet? We see that Hamlet is enraged, he's confused, even he's scared at times. But none of those emotions find the right kind of settings or the right kind of actions. So, like, neither his vengeance nor his fear finds a proper channeling. So, despite being a tragic hero, he's just his emotions are sporadic, his actions are sporadic. Means now and then he's brooding on existentialism, he's overthinking on the purpose of life, and then suddenly out of nowhere he lashes out at Ophelia, which ultimately jeopardizes his relationship with her. And then impulsively he just slashes the sword through the curtain. We know that very famous scene where he kills Polonius. So what happens? The audience, how does the audience perceive Hamlet? He comes off as a very impulsive, frustrated. He comes off as a prince who is undeserving of the throne, right? He does not come off as a tragic hero because he's completely flawed. And even other than Eliot, many critics have criticized Hamlet's character. Someone has even called him clinically depressed character. I think it was AC Bradley or some modernist Shakespearean theorist. And Voltaire, very famously, Voltaire has called Hamlet vulgar. He's almost vulgar. So therein lies Hamlet's artistic failure, according to Eliot. And why it is called the Mona Lisa of literature is because if you look at the painting of Mona Lisa, it is very artistically correct painting. Like Mona Lisa is always looking at us. If we go in the right, it seems like Mona Lisa is looking at us. If we go at the left of the portrait, again Mona Lisa is looking at us. But it lacks that aesthetic charm. I mean, in today's time, it would be incorrect to say that she is not beautiful. It would be politically incorrect. But yes, it likes that that stereotypical feminine charm is somehow missing from Mona Lisa. So therefore, Hamlet is artistically perfect, but it just fails to appeal. The character just fails to appeal, and that is why it is an artistic failure.
Okay, so
Okay,
yeah.
at this point, I would like to say something. It is nothing like information, but a matter of arguing that actually we had a professor, Chinmay Guha. He is a Sahitya Academy Award winner, and he is expert on the Eliot and this modernism. And he said that actually, in his opinion, Hamlet, if I judge Hamlet from the perspective of Aristotle, then he appears as a failure, as a tragic hero. But in his opinion, from Chinmay Guha, he says that he is the most appropriate tragic hero in terms of modernist context from our times, because the delusion he deals with, the inability to make the decision, that is the crux of human suffering in 20th century. We are always in a conflict. So he represents Hamlet as the most appropriate modernist hero who represents our reality of this time. So that's what I wanted to
Yes,
mention.
yes. He's a postmodernist hero who very famously, masterfully is able to express the anxieties, postmodern anxieties. But from point of view of an proper Aristotelian drama, tragic hero, he fails.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
actually, you
actually.
are very right because whatever his perception is actually correct. I personally feel that Hamlet is more like us. The indecisiveness that we feel nowadays, it is somewhere same with Hamlet. And I think whenever I read literature, there are two characters. I consider them modernist. One is Hamlet, and second is the wife of Bath from Canterbury Tales. The character of wife of Bath is very interesting, and it is more modernistic. So these two characters are very interesting. Okay, so yes,
And we always like used to wonder that how Shakespeare could represent modern suffering in that time in
exactly,
Elizabethan era.
exactly. With so much precision and what we can say that discussing things psychologically very perfect. When I watched the movie Heather, so actually when you read and when you watch something related to that text, you connect with the text more. So I think if you haven't watched, please go and watch Heather movie, which is adaptation of Hamlet. You will really enjoy that movie. Okay,
Yes,
so
ma'am. I already watched it.
it is very interesting to see that movie. Okay, next who is answering? Brindavan sir, Anamika, and Akansha.
Uh, Related this is in Hamlet and His Problem by T.S. Eliot. And in this object correlator, he said that art or any literary work should have object, or and their action and their description should be relate with that object. If, for example, if we want to scene of any love, create to love scene, so their surroundings and facial expression and activities relate with this theme of love, so that can create effectiveness in the art. And this is fell of artistic fell in Hamlet because his actions and his object not relate and not match each other in unity. So this he called this is artistic failure. And on other hand, if we take example of Macbeth, where the actions of in which scene there is a hosty and cloudy way or a dark side, that is like related with the his action and also object with the work means object and his action should be unified, so that they can create a effect in the art. So this is the objective correlative according to T.S. Eliot.
Yes, very to the point definition you have given.
Thank you.
Okay, next.
So, objective correlative is a literary term coined by T.S. Eliot in his essay Hamlet and Its Problem, which is published in 1919. According to him, objective correlative means that emotion in poetry or drama should be expressed through concrete images, situations, or actions not stated directly. The poet should not tell the emotion directly. Instead, emotion should be invoked in the readers through external objective elements. For example, in Shakespeare's Macbeth, the image of blood on the Lady Macbeth's hand, acts as an objective correlative for guilt and moral corruption. On the other hand, Eliot criticizes Hamlet because Hamlet's emotions are in excess of the situation presented, making the play emotionally unbalanced. So here the connection with the situation of emotions of Hamlet connecting to the situation is considered in axis. That's why the he is his character is criticized by T.S. Eliot. So this is objective correlative by Eliot from my side.
Okay, next.
Ma'am, I would like to conclude all the things in a
Uh,
simple words. Yes, ma'am. Akansha ma'am, please speak.
Okay, so after Akansha ma'am, you continue.
Actually, everyone already explained it very nicely. So the term objective correlative was coined by T.S. Eliot in his essay Hamlet and His Problems. Eliot defines that a set of objects, situations, and events which is serve as a particular emotion. He was saying that in the drama or any piece of literature, there are some objects which relate with the emotion which is presented in the scene. So you are saying the external factors also presented when the emotion is evoking in the reader, so that it can the object can correlate with the emotion of the reader. So the images and the objects or external factors relate with the emotion of the reader. Like everyone given the example of Macbeth, in which the blood is showing the guilt of Macbeth and the moral corruption. Similarly, in the poem The Wasteland, the Eliot showing dryness, decay, all the things showing the that time spiritual barrenness or the situations of after the World War II. The world has nothing. Uh, Everything showing the thing that there is hopelessness, because the dry land, what it is shown, the wasteland, what it so that there is nothing in the world which is showing the liveliness. So this is how the T.S. Eliot given that term in the Hamlet, that in Hamlet, he the character or the imagery of the play lacks the objective correlative with the emotions of the main character. That is from my side.
Okay, ma'am. Yes, sir, please continue.
So I would like to conclude it in very simple words that everyone has cleared it. Uh, as objective correlative is a set of any situation or objects or events, and suppose any character on the stage is able to show his emotions or evoke the emotions in the readers or audience, that is called objective correlative. In simple line we can say that emotions should be shown, not told. If a character is telling emotions, it means the action is not good, right? If the character shows the emotions, right, so that audience can relate, audience can evoke the things, then that is called objective correlative. There are two terms which are very important to understand it: disassociation of sensibility or unification of sensibility. Disassociation of sensibility means a split between thought and emotion, feelings and thought. And unification of sensibility, it means there is unified of intellectual things or feelings and thought. So, as we all know very well, that metaphysical poets use unification of sensibility, or post metaphysical poets use disassociation of sensibility. So, it is from my side.
Actually, not only post metaphysical poets. The thing Eliot said that up to metaphysical poets there was unifiedness of the mind and heart, and after that it started become either only the artistic aspects or the emotional aspects, only up to modernists, and then after the modernists, then again came the unification of sensibility.
And we can also relate with this concept object correlated with rasa theory, where the definition of ras anubhav, vibhav that is contained alamban and uddipan. Alamban means hero or character. If you want to create love emotion, so the character should be so is a smile or like love means song there should be, and also environment should be according to that condition, so that create a object, and so we can relate with this with rasa theory also. And this was given in our Indian aesthetic very 200 2000 year ago, and this we can relate with this, I think. Uddipan and Alaman.
Yes, sir, definitely. We can relate.
Okay,
Yes.
one thing I would like to mention that
So
Eliot
yes,
stressed upon
next
that
question
is
is
the
same, dissociation of sensibility and unification of sensibility. So this is our next question. Please answer.
so I was saying that in terms of objective correlative, used this term or like he promoted this term to achieve one more important thing, that is impersonality, that the author should not impose his own feelings in the text, but somehow motivate the author, sorry, the reader or the audience to feel that through his own feelings. So the objective correlative is a set of objects that evoke a specific emotion. So instead of directly stating the emotion, the poet should represent it through concrete images that ensures the emotional precision and impersonality, like the using of fog in the proof of the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock, that represents the unclarity, the hesitation of mind that Prufrock is facing.
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yes.
Ma'am, can we relate this with reader response theory as such that it is impersonality of author or it's depend on the reader's emotion?
Can be related with reader response theory? I think not exactly. Because reader response theory, actually, when we read practical criticism and after practical criticism, somewhere we can relate it with reader response theory. So, actually, I cannot think of anything so that we can relate it. If anyone has any point, you can.
Yeah, I'll come to this question. But Audrey sir, hasn't Eliot discussed impersonality theory in tradition and individual talent?
Yeah, he specifically discussed, mentioned it in that, but he imposed its importance in across his all the criticism.
Hmm.
But as this has said, so we can connect with a response, reader response theory. That's why I'm asking.
No, no,
I
ma'am.
don't think
Actually,
so.
you can connect it with new criticism by
Hmm.
Wimsatt and Beardsley. Impersonality theory, where new criticism and all the new critics they said that we should strive for only objectively looking at the text and not take into consideration the background, biological background, biography, or the preconditioning of the author, and or even the socio-political context in which that text is produced. Maybe if we have to connect, then I think impersonality can be connected with new criticism, where again Cleanth Brooks theory would come in. So
But the difference between the both things, like these theories and the T.S. Eliot, is the crux is the same, but the main difference comes where is Eliot is talking about the writer, how writer should write the
yeah,
work, and reader
yeah,
response theory represented through the perspective of the reader, how the reader should interpret it. But it's obviously interconnected.
But actually,
Okay, okay, okay.
Eliot's theory is different because he is also talking about tradition. We should follow the tradition. In tradition, individual talent.
yes, ma'am. So
Yeah,
he is
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah.
completely
He does.
disregarding the
He is not
socio-political
disregarding the
context of
thing.
the poet.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, anyone explaining these two terms?
Uh,
Ma'am, may I?
Yes, please.
okay.
Ma'am, you was talking about unification of sensibility and dissociation of sensibility.
Hmm.
Yes, ma'am, may I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Explain these two terms.
Um, Ma'am, the term was used by T.S. Eliot in his essay Metaphysical Poet. Uh, Unification of sensibility basically means the fusion of thoughts and feeling in the poetry, where poet experience and expresses both intellectual ideas and the emotions in a unified way, or when a poet can unite different kinds of experience into a single idea. For example, John Donne poem A Valediction, where he compares his love with a compass, and dissociation of sensibility, where there's a separation between the thought and feeling,
when there is a separation between thought and feeling, this can be considered as the dissociation of sensibility.
Okay, next.
Yes, I would like also say this dissociation of sensibility and association of sensibility. This term given in the essay of metaphysical poets by T.S. Eliot, and association or unification of sensibility when emotion and actions or thought unified, and so we can say association or unification. And for example, metaphysical poetry, T.S. Eliot given this example, metaphysical poetry most of all use this unification of sensibility where emotion and thought unified. And when dissociation of sensibility, this is seen in Pope and Dryden poetry, where the emotion and thought not unified, according to T.S. Eliot. So with this we can say dissociation of sensibility. Yes.
Okay, Audrey, you are answering.
Eh, Yeah, so I was saying that unification of sensibility, as everyone said, is the combination of thought and feeling, thought and intellect, and feeling and emotion into a single poem, which lasted up to like the metaphysical poets, according to Eliot. And only not only metaphysical poets, if we look at the sonnets of Shakespeare and even Chaucer, those has the intellectual element and the emotional element both were infused. But after the metaphysical poets, these two things got separated. Either it is only thought and intellect based on, and on the other hand it is feeling and emotion based, like the poems of Dryden and the neoclassical poets. They are mostly intellectual without the emotion. And if we come to the romantics, they are mostly feeling and emotion based, but they lack the thought and intellect perspective. But then after the romantic period, from the modernist period, the unification came back again in the poems of modernist writers like T.S. Eliot and W.B. Yeats. They again brought back that unification of sensibility.
But this is not entirely true, especially in the case of Keats and Shelley's poetry. It is very thought provoking, intellectual, literary. It and Keats had made used a lot of classical elements, Greco Roman references, and even if you just look at Ode to the West Wind, the way he has given a character arc to the wind itself. So it's not entirely true. We cannot compartmentalize it. Also, Eliot, because we're discussing Eliot, let's talk about he was very traditionalist in his approach. Like he was not that open minded. I mean, of course, we can say that many critics have said that about Eliot, that he had his own preconceptions and then he made theories in his head. And even Hamlet, he is very unjustly criticized as artistic failure because Hamlet was way ahead of its time. Hamlet was also a Renaissance hero, the prototype of humanist Renaissance, because he dared in that time to indulge in purpose of life and existential philosophy, which we later see reflected in works of Sartre and such.
Exactly, you are right.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I want to conclude this. Uh, uh, According to T.S. Eliot, dissociation of sensibility occurred after the 17th century, when thought and feeling became separated in poetry. And later poets could think deeply or feel intensely, but not both together. So, and the unification of sensibility found in a metaphysical poet like John Donne refers to the harmonious fusion of intellect and emotion. So Eliot believed that modern poetry should aim to recover this lost unity to achieve greater artistic depth.
Yes. Okay, so anyone wants to add more points, or should we move to another question? Okay, so let's discuss now I.A. Richards and his philosophies. So my question is, what are the two uses of language according to I.A. Richards?
Yes, ma'am. According to I. Richards, language has two main uses. The first one is referential and another is emotive. Referential language conveys factual information and is commonly used in science and prose. But emotional language aims to arouse feelings and attitudes in the reader and is dominate and it is dominant in poetry. So, I. Richards emphasizes that poetic language often blend both uses, which makes literary interpretation complex and rich. So, uh, it is my side.
Okay. Anyone wants to add more points? Actually, this is a very factual question.
Yes, ma'am. It's already said by sir, and I would also from my word. There is two use language. First is referential. Referential language used in to give information, factual information of anything that we can also in science and prose and other work that give the factual information or direct information. And second is emotive or this use mainly used in poetry and literature where the emotion and feelings we can find by this language, but this cannot be verified or we can say this cannot be factually compared with anything. So this is very subjective. Different person feel different. One poem, different person feel different. The same poem. So they say the emotive use of language. So yes, I.
Okay. Anyone? So let's discuss the next question because this is a very factual question. Everybody knows about it. So, what is practical criticism? Why does Richards reject authorial intention and historical background? So, just discuss what is practical criticism given by I.A. Richards.
So, in Richard's term, practical criticism is the closed reading of the text alone, which means it focuses on the language, the figures of speech, the imagery, the structure used on the text only, without considering the historical context or the background of the author, and why he rejected why he promoted this technique and rejected the author and the history. The reason is, according to him, they distract from the textual meaning, and it sometimes encourage biographical fallacy, which means sometimes if we know about the biography of the author or his background, sometimes we tend to emotionally connect with the author, and we judge the text based on that, not on the text alone. So that's what he said, that poetry should be judged by what it does and not who wrote it. Like sometimes we if we read about the sufferings of John Keats, we start to empathize with him, but according to I.A. Richards, that's not how poetry should be interpreted. So this is it.
Yes, ma'am. The practical criticism is a method developed by Guy Richard that focuses on close reading of the text without using biography or historical information. And Richard also rejects the authorial intention and historical background because they often create preconceived ideas and distract readers from the language of the poem itself. So the I. Richards' aim was to train reader to develop an organized emotional and intellectual response based only on the textual evidence. So he gave the practical criticism.
Okay, so the definition is same. Everybody knows. Let's discuss the next question, which is a comparison between T.S. Eliot's theory, where he is discussing about tradition and individual talent, and I.E. Richards discussing and favoring practical criticism, don't focusing on the background and historical information about the text and the author. So personally, what do you think you will follow as if you I ask your personal views regarding T.S. Eliot and I.A. Richards. Anyone? So we are comparing these two theories by T.S. Eliot and by I.A. Richards. And what is your personal opinion?
Which one by Eliot? I missed it. Sorry.
T.S. Eliot's tradition, where he is favoring that we should follow a tradition, where if we take the views of I.A. Richards, he is saying that we should read a text separately without giving so much importance to author's background and the text historical backgrounds, historical socio-political background. So personally, what do you think? What should be there? We should follow a tradition, or we should do a close reading of a text?
Personally, I feel that practical criticism is good. If I talk about myself, then I think that we don't have to see the background of anyone. If whenever, suppose, let's take very general example. When we interview any candidate or check the copy of any student, if we already know very well that he is intelligent, then his past always forces us to give more marks to him. But when we do not see the name and we only see the text, what he has written, then we always give the actual marks which what he deserves. So personally, if you are asking, then practical criticism is good. And when it comes on tradition and individual talent, then I think that I may be wrong, but he is only taking a reference of the tradition, but he is also talking about individual talent. So there also he is not completely talking about that only tradition we have to follow. And if the things is such that he is talking about tradition, then I think practical criticism is good.
Okay, so let's take Touchstone method also in the comparison. So now we have
Ma'am,
Touchstone method and tradition, and on the one side we have practical criticism. So, as a teacher's perspective, I want to ask that if we are not, like, suppose we are not taking reference to anything and we are just judging the text. So, in my opinion, that will be more subjective. But to judge something, to evaluate something, we should have a reference so that we can match that if that is appropriate or not. So, in a student's perspective, and if we are taking all these things as a teacher's perspective, that I think we should follow a tradition or we should follow a touchstone just to have a reference, just to have a bar. Because why we set a bar or why we set a standard? Because we want a student to follow those things so that he or she can be at that point. So, in that perspective, I think there should be a touchstone or there should be a reference so that we can judge according to that. Okay, anyone who was, I think Naznam, you were saying something?
yeah. Yes, ma'am. Actually, here personally, I will be more relying towards Eliot because the present is all about the fusion of past. How we are, correcting ourselves with the help of our past errors. So, according to my personal views, Eliot theory I am considering more because tradition is not something which we are, accepting blindly. We are just filtering it out and adding it in the present. And for enhancing our present knowledge, we must acquire the knowledge of past. As you have also told that reference of something is crucial to signify the present evaluation. So I also go with the same that it is equally important to read or take good things from historical sense because our present or existing literary tradition somewhere being impacted or modified through the past. And T.S. Eliot also has told that past should be altered by the present as much as present is making us genius with the help of the past. So I'll go with T.S. Eliot and Arnold that stone method as well. Thank you.
Okay, next. And I want each and
So,
everyone, please share your views. Okay?
I would prefer the not prefer, but I think I would go with the method that Eliot when Eliot proposed, because Eliot is concerned with the relationship between the poet, the tradition, and the literary history, whereas Richard is concerned with reader's response to the text itself. Eliot rejects the personal emotion, but he insists that the poet should be aware of his historical background, like his tradition, not using that directly into his work, but he should be use it as a backdrop or like have it in his mind. And whereas Richard totally rejects the authorial intention, and he focuses only on how the poem functions linguistically. But if you think practically, that's not possible. Even as a reader and both as a author, we are affected by our backgrounds and our social settings. No matter how much we try, it will affect us. I interpret a poem in a way, and someone from a different age or from different location will obviously interpret the poem or the work in different way. So we cannot go past our social setting or like our tradition. So I would like to go with Eliot. And if I think about Matthew Arnold, the touchstone method is not that relatable, in my opinion, at current times. Because if we judge Eliot's poetry in touchstone method, there is no high, not the high seriousness that Arnold suggested. And that way, the kind of figure of speech he uses, the colloquial language he uses, then Arnold would say it's totally rubbish work. So Eliot's opinion is, I think, is the most appropriate, because it somehow gets between the tradition and the individuality and keeps a good balance between both. More practical thinking.
Ma'am, can you repeat the question
Yes.
once?
The question is, if we compare the theories of T.S. Eliot and I.A. Richards, personally, what you feel, what you will prefer? This is the question. Like tradition or the practical criticism?
Okay.
Can I answer?
Yes, please.
So we are comparing Eliot and practical criticism. So practical criticism by Richards and Ogden, we have to know that it also comes as a reaction to something. So there was a lot of sociological criticism. It was a time between the wars, and it was a time when a lot of people were literate. There were pamphlets, there were newspapers, there were biographies of the authors that were published, and everyone was, everyone wanted the drama, the stage to reflect the social issues. And because of that, many good artists were rejected, claiming that they don't come from our class. Because they don't come from our class, we will not accept them. So that becomes true for jazz age, and also like Ralph Ellison. So to counter that, this Cambridge intellectuals, they came up with a practical criticism that we will judge the work or a text only by how it looks. That is the close reading, by structure and language and diction. But if we talk about today's times, these things are very obsolete. I mean, today the time is about genuinity, relatability. So emotion is inevitable, and even the meanings of texts have changed. What is a text today? A good YouTube channel, an Insta channel that tells about the roots, their own roots. If someone is able to present in folk narratives, in folklores, in cuisines, that becomes more successful, even if it is blended with fiction, with story. So obviously we have come a long way. We are living in post digitalized, post modern world. So today genuinity, and today of someone who expresses their art with a lot of emotion and with a lot of conviction about the roots from where they come from, that kind of novel or that kind of text, it becomes very popular, it gains relatability. So I think comparing it with like Eliot or I.A. Richards, today with these parameters, we will not be able to successfully critique a work of text, any text, I mean.
Okay, next, Akansha ma'am, please answer.
Yes. I think the T.S. Eliot approach is more cultural and aesthetic. He and the I.A. Richard used the approach which is linguistic in a sense. So both are different in on the basis of their approaches. One use the cultural and the aesthetic approach, and second one is use the linguistic approach. So the Eliot focuses on the tradition, form, impersonality. His theory of impersonality, as all we know that he is saying that poet's background, his emotion, his intention should not be affect his work of art. He is not saying the emotion should not be in the text, but he is saying that his personal feeling and emotion should not be affect his work. The like he praises Jordan for his emotion and wit, but he criticized Wordsworth on the other hand for his emotion because he said the work of art become more logical when we control our emotions and give the right emotion at the right point of time in the work. That is, he is saying in his impersonality theory. So he also focuses on the tradition. He is saying without knowing our roots, we cannot go further in our upcoming work. Like in future, we could not create a new, more artistic work if we do not have the tradition. We do not recall our roots and tradition. Whereas I Richards saying the totally different thing because he used the linguistic approach. He focused on the psychological aspect, he is the main purpose of new criticism, ambiguity, and the reader response. He is somehow do not do not matlab, like he did not focuses on the poet at all. He is saying the poet background, his now past do not affect his work. Whereas T.S. Eliot uses the term tradition, but I.S. Richards focuses on the form, the linguistic part of the work, and the reader response also. As every reader create a different meaning of the text according to his psyche, what the meaning already created in his mind. Like if I read a poem and some other person reading a poem, they will create their own meaning according to their psychological or their previous knowledge, we can say, and their their own emotions. The difference I can see, T.S. Eliot approach is cultural and aesthetic, and Richard's approach is psychological and linguistic. Both are not. Both of them are correct at their approaches, the type of criticism they are doing.
Okay, Vrindavan sir, you then Nidhi ma'am, you answer the question.
Yes, ma'am. I think T.S. Eliot approach should be for writing. If we want to write or if we want to create art or work, literature work, so we should we should have knowledge of our past writers, our past editions. Then we can create a good work. And also there is a should be individual talent. And if we say about I. Richards, he focus for reading reading poetry or any work for student purpose, I think. So if we, any student or if we reading poetry for our pleasure, so we should not focus on very background or historical background, so we can read the text and we can enjoy it. But if you want to create a art or work and literary work, so we should have knowledge of our past writers and poets. And if we say about Mathew Arnold Touchstone Method, so this method I think it is for standardization. This not be used in practical way, because every writer has different originality or different individual talent. We cannot compare with classical like that in present time. So yes.
It means we have to play safe. Any question is asked related to comparative study, then we have to say that we can't compare the both writers or both thoughts, right? In an interview, we have to play safe. Don't compare anything.
For our perspective, we can say that because classical writer were different, their historical background were different, but in present situation, this is different background, so we cannot compare completely.
Okay, Nidhi ma'am, please answer.
Ma'am, I will go with I will start and T.S. Eliot because not with Arnold because as ma'am said and as sir said, uh, it is too moralistic or not suitable for the modern literature. And I will go with T.S. Eliot because without, as ma'am said, without knowing our past or without absorbing past, we cannot go with a forward. And I.A. Richard is more objective, and we can say he told the method of most practical and applicable to all the texts and the foundation of modern criticism given by the I.A. Richard. And he has given the most effective for the testing writer's work. And Eliot is the best for understanding only for literary tradition. Uh, Arnold's method is also for valuable mainly for historical importance. But I will go with T.S. Eliot and I. Richard.
Okay, so I think we have discussed almost all the concepts and questions that I have given, and nothing is remaining. Like majorly, we have discussed everything. If you have any question, doubt, suggestion, you can give now.
I have an observation here that no matter how much we try to go beyond our tradition or our history or our past, the tradition doesn't seem to lift us because even these theories of Arnold and I.A. Richards seems appropriate when we judge it by their contemporary times, their contemporary socio-political setting. Then only it becomes appropriate. And if we start to judge it by modern times, it becomes inappropriate like Arnold can be applied on Eliot in these times. So we cannot go beyond our background or our tradition.
Exactly, this is same. Like, what if we talk about journally? What is tradition? That is something that we learn from our surroundings, and we cannot get out of it. Like practically, it is not possible.
But there can be some errors in our surroundings, or there can be some mistakes, right? We can't believe on superstitions. Also, some superstitions are